Okay, so I've got the elevation open now from the PDF file, which is page 10, you can see up here, and that shows the level heights. And now you can, if you like, go through the same process I did with the plan, create a JPEG from this file, from this page, and insert that into Revit. What I found with side views in Revit is that you still get a reference for every view in plan. So if I insert it into, say, an elevation view, say I wanted to insert into which elevation? This is the Harrington Street elevation, so that is that side, isn't it? Yep. Okay, so if I wanted to insert into this, essentially the east elevation, then I'd want to have another copy of the elevation with the image turned off, most likely, the same way we do with the floor plans. But that means I'd need then two references for those elevations. And I'd have to go through hiding that elevation reference in every floor plan, and it's a lot of extra management that you maybe don't need to do if you just read off the values, because all we really need here is the level heights, and we can just refer back to this and then type them in as we go. So don't automatically just insert everything that you need if it's not worthwhile. And again, especially elevations and sections, I find often it isn't really worth it. So here you can see we've got the ground floor at 15.1. So that's AHD from sea level, essentially. And again, you need to make a decision how you're going to set your projects out. You can just work with those levels, and I think maybe with this, because it's not really that high, we can do that. But if you've got a level like 40 metres or something like that, then it's a long way to lift everything up, because again, Revit wants you to physically move everything to that location if you want that number to appear. And so you'll see if I go now and open up an elevation view, south, we're at 0 at the moment. So I'm going to have to move this up 15 metres to get that number there to appear as 15,100, which is really what we want. So I'm going to do that, but again, make a decision when you have levels that are greater than that, and you can always reduce it or use reduced levels and say, 30,000 is my 0 point, and work from there. If you can, it's good, yeah. If you're close to sea level, then just work with absolute levels, which is what I'm going to do here. Yeah, relatively, because it's in the city and it's not that high above the actual sea. Often you'll have even lower levels than this. I've worked with, 5 and 10 above sea level over in Bondi and places like that. But often, yeah, well, it's easy. If you're working with AHD, then you don't have to tell anyone that I'm setting out a certain distance above AHD. I'll just know that it's this distance, that's your absolute level above sea level or above AHD. So here, though, it's going to cause a few problems straight away. You'll see in Revit, as I go into the south elevation, can you see how those grid bubbles show up? Notice, if I look back in the ground floor plan, it goes from D to H. Looking in the south elevation, where's D? Okay, so that's the first thing you need to be aware of. It doesn't show grids that are at an angle, that aren't perpendicular. That's one of the reasons I wanted to get as many at right angles as I could. Same if I go to, east or west, it's only showing number 4, because the others aren't parallel. That's what I'm saying, you're going to have to redraw some of these. You can try stretching them, but sometimes it's easier just to redraw them. So be aware of that. And so I'll start with east though, since that's the one that we have. And we'll move that ground floor and level 1 15 metres. So I'm going to select both of those, just using a crossing window or using control, however you want to select those 2 levels, and I'm going to click the move button to move them both together, and I'm going to click a start point and then take it straight up 15,100, enter, and they go up. So you can see 15 metres sounds like a lot, but in Revit drawing window it's really not that far. Yeah, I'll do that again, so I'll undo that. Okay, so again, just selecting them both with a window right to left, crossing window, and then clicking the move button, clicking a base point somewhere, and then moving the cursor so it goes to 90 degrees, and typing in 15,100. Enter. Okay, so grid number 4, not a problem. I can just stretch that using the grips there. I can extend that. But if I go back to ground floor, notice how now I can't even see grids 1 to 4, 1 to 3. Now, there's a trick there. If you go to site, then you should still be able to see them. And what I'm going to do so I don't get into trouble is right away I'm going to delete grids 1, 2 and 3 and also grid D, and I'll redraw those. I know they're problem grids, so I'm going to delete those before I get into any more trouble, because as I change the other levels, they're going to have to be redone. So I'm lucky, because of the way the site view is set up, that I can still see those grids. So make sure you just clear those, and I'll show you again a few more examples just so you can see why it's so important to think about these things at the beginning. So again, back in my east elevation now, see also that the section line is down where it was. So Revit's a clever program, but it's still got some issues like this, because again it's all set up based on those default settings, and they can't know how high your building is from the very beginning, or at what point it starts. Things like that you need to sort of establish very early on. If you're yes, you've used a construction template. Yeah. So you need to start again. Yeah.
Could you, without doing this, just make ground level 0 and then add floor level C?
You could, but then later on it would be very difficult to bring the whole thing up. You could, and then you can bring things up. It's just that there's a lot more to think about if you're doing it later. Okay, so notice how with my section marker there, I've stretched both the view extents, that's the arrows at the top and the bottom of that dashed rectangle, and then also I'm using the little grip marker there on the section symbol to extend that. Now, you can do that with sections as well. You can extend sections, but only if they're perpendicular to the view. Right? So the reason I deleted those other grids wasn't so much because they were too low. I could have actually moved them up. The problem is extending them so that they go through all of the levels. How do we stretch them if we can't see them? Okay, so, and again, that's just one of those little quirks in Revit. You really should think about your levels before you go too far. I wanted to have some grids in there so I know basically where the levels are and where they should be. So I can see a grid there, that's fine. And in the north elevation I can see a few grids there, and they're all okay. I can stretch those here just to get a starting point. Right, so I deliberately made some of the grids even though I knew I'd have to fix them up afterwards. Now I can think about the levels and then come back and finalise the grids afterwards. So we've got here the levels. I'm just going to move this PDF over to one side so I can keep looking at those numbers without having to keep switching windows. Okay, so I've got the ground floor obviously. First finished floor level is the next one. So I'll do the same with Revit. I'll just make it so that it takes up a smaller area. Okay, so level 1, well, unfortunately, alphabetically, F comes after G, also it comes before G, so I don't want to change level 1 to be first. I'm just going to keep it as level 1 so that it stays in order, and make it FFL. Exactly, yep. Now, if you want your levels to go in order of height and not have names like ground floor and level 1, you can put numbers in front of them. So you can make this O1 ground floor and then O2, and then it can be first or anything you like. So that's one method that people use. But I'll just leave it as level 1, I think, for now. And then the height. So here, oh great, okay, typical surveyors. They've done it, or planners, I don't know who's done this, but 18903, I'm sure that is the actual measurement. Normally though, you would round that off to the nearest 5 mil, because something like that. Well, I'll do it like this for now, and then we can maybe, if you get time, or if you want to later, move all of these levels down 3 millimetres, and maybe move this one up 3 millimetres. That's a decision that you can make though. I'll do it the way it's written though for now. So now with the level tool, I'm going to make a new level. Now another thing to watch out for is copying levels. If you copy a level, do you know what happens in Revit? It works, you can copy levels. The problem is it doesn't automatically create plan views for that level if you copy them. So it's actually a good method if you don't want a plan. Often you want a level that doesn't have a plan view, if it's just to establish the height of something, like a fascia or something, or a gutter, and you don't want a plan for that level. Then it's a good method, you can copy the level. But I do want a plan for each of these levels, so I'm going to use the level tool to make each one. And they're just like reference planes or grids. If you start with them lining up on the left hand side and then draw to the right, it'll put the tag on the second point that you click. So left to right, and try to line them up with the levels you've already made. North. I'm doing this one in north. I should have been doing it all in the same. I did some of it in east as well earlier. I'm going to check all the elevations anyway as I go.
Doesn't matter if you look at it.
No, it could be any elevation to create them. I'll go to east and I'll do the rest there, it doesn't make any difference. So then here level 2, FFL, always yes to rename corresponding views, and this is 22273. So third is 25663. Two 29023. So level 5 or 50 is FFL 32370. Sorry. Now, okay, so here's a good example where you don't need a plan for the parapet. So the parapet shouldn't need a separate floor plan. You can just use the level 5 floor plan for that. So I can select that level and then copy instead of using the level tool to create it, and that will give me a level without a floor plan. Notice how there's no level 6 floor plan over here, or ceiling plan. Okay, so let's just call it top. 33370. And now again I'll use the level tool, I think for the last time, to create the level 6. Oh, for which one? For starting level 2 up. Okay, so level 2 is 22273, and level 3 is 25663. Level 4 is 29023. Level 5's 32370.
So
32370. And then level 6 is 35540. Now there is one last level you should make, which is top of roof. And that is 39300. There we go. 39300. Exactly, yeah, exactly, yeah. Because you want a floor plan for the top of roof, as well as level 6, obviously, yeah. Yeah. Okay, so notice how I've got grid number 4 extending through all of those levels. And that means if I go to any of those floor plans, I will see grid number 4. But then notice how on level 6, I can see grid number 4, but I can't see all the other grid lines that I can see in my lower floor plans. And that's simply because when you look in the north or the south elevation, you'll see that those grid lines only extend up as high as those levels. And so it's fine with grids that are vertical or horizontal. You can easily go to an elevation view, find them and stretch them so that they extend through to those levels. And if I look in those floor plans now, oh well, it's making a line. Oh no, there we are. So that's fine, I can see them all. Okay, so those grid lines there weren't visible before, but now that I've stretched them so that they extend through those levels, I can see them. So that's okay if you want to adjust existing grid lines and they're visible in an elevation view. You can easily adjust them. But what about those grids that were at a funny angle? There's no easy way of adjusting those unless you make a view at the same angle where you can see them. And that's a lot of extra work, and I think it's actually more work than just remaking the grids. So that's what I'm going to do. Okay, so back into the floor plans, grids and reference planes are easy to make, so don't be afraid to just delete them if they're causing a problem and create them again. It's easier than doing a lot of other things that you might be thinking of. Okay, so there now you can see I've made my new grid bubble, which is actually going to be my number 1 again, following the edge of the wall correctly this time. So it's giving me a chance to fix that as well. Remember, it doesn't start on the corner of the building here, it actually should be back behind. I'll change that to number 1. And I'll show you something that I think is kind of interesting. Probably not the most interesting thing in the world, but notice how if I go to my highest level, which is top of roof, automatically the grid there is visible. So again, that's just one of those little quirks of Revit. If you make the levels go to a certain height, and then come back and make the grids afterwards, it automatically extends those levels through. Extend those grids through to your levels, to your highest level, automatically. But levels that you make in the beginning, because you won't have those, grids that you make in the beginning, because you won't have those levels, are not as high, and it doesn't extend them automatically. You have to do that manually. Okay, so back to my plan view again, and this time I will make yet another grid line. Going through the centre of those columns. Number 2, it's clever enough to at least count again from number 1. Because we wouldn't have been able to extend them very easily to go up to the highest level.
Oh, so we should need to re-add them once we've done this level?
Yeah, exactly. Yep, yep. Okay, so here I'm going to just draw the grid line over the plan, because I can see there my 2 dashed lines that I want to be centred between. Well, I probably shouldn't be telling you this, but to be honest, you don't need to be too fussy with the measurements for a project like this, because remember, you're not building it in real life, and no one's ever going to go and take measurements off the building and find out if you're 50 mils out here or there. So as long as it's close and you know, at a human scale, looks similar to the real building, I think you'll be fine. And within itself, as long as everything makes sense, I think that's the important thing. So don't get too picky with little measurements here and there. And I need D as well. Okay, so let's, yeah, sure. Oh, how did you hide it? There's 2 ways you can hide things, either with the glasses down the bottom. If you've used that, then try reset, temporary, hide, isolate. So you then click on the light bulb next to the glasses, and you should see it. And if you see it, then you can select it and then unhide it by right clicking. Okay, so there's my grid D remade, and now, just to check that everything's working, I'll go to my top of roof, and that shows all of the grid lines. But what are we missing? Remember, I made a reference plane right at the beginning, and that still shows in my site plan, but of course, because that reference plane is at a slight angle, it also isn't showing in my elevation view, so it's going to be difficult to adjust, so I will remake that as well in my newly adjusted ground floor. Well, the view itself isn't new, but the level or the height of it is changed. And so I can just draw that again. Yeah, we'll need to delete it and make it again. Okay, so now just to show you the finished product, if I go to my highest level floor plan again, notice how now I can see that reference plane because I've made it again. Even though I made it exactly the same way as I did before, because I've got the levels now, it's made it as high as those levels. Okay, so I know it might seem strange at first, but once you get used to the way Revit wants you to do things, then it's something that you'll just do out of habit. And there we go, so that looks pretty good, and check the site view and that's fine. Okay, so next we can make some walls and some physical objects that you can finally see in your 3D views.